Welcome. This is Astrology Insight Now, a weekly forecast program with astrology and other ways to help you make the most of your week and to heighten confidence for daily life. It's run by Pamela Cuccinell, that's me, the astrologer, and I invite you to find out more about my work at insightoasis.com. I look forward to your joining us every week. Please share with your friends, and here we go.
Waning moon cycle, Mercury retrograde, Jupiter retrograde, which I haven't been talking about a whole lot recently, but since it goes direct on Tuesday, I will certainly touch on that. The other thing that's happening, of course, is that this is the week that precedes the new moon next week, coming off the eclipse energy of the two eclipses we had in February. So this waning moon cycle, even though the eclipses will be hanging around us for another 5 months and change, we are in a period where we can address what we want to wrap up, what we want to put to rest, what we want to shelve. And keeping in mind the Mercury retrograde, we can hasten completion of things we don't want to bring into the next lunar cycle. It's always good to keep that in mind. I said this to my husband at dinner. He was sort of going on about how I hadn't told him Mercury was retrograde. He's leading a certain program of something and people misunderstood. And I said, I do tell you, but you don't always listen. So listen, communication, how we transmit ideas. I mean, one thing he's gained from what he learned the hard way from his meeting was that he thinks he's making things clear, but the other people involved, people are on different channels. They don't necessarily read attachments. We are in a time when reading and people's ability to follow through, gain the whole text of a mailing is minimal. Oftentimes people don't go beyond the first paragraph or the first couple of sentences. The subject head is radically important. And sometimes it's more constructive to send a few missives with different subject heads so people know, oh, okay, this is part 1, part 2, part 3, because attention spans are continually fractured. And so this Mercury retrograde period can be very, very helpful for us to continue to understand the world in which we find ourselves with supposedly magnified forms of communication, but less ability for people to really absorb, process, digest, research, understand, because we're being hit so much with so much the brain can't process quickly enough. So Monday, March 9th, the moon in the sign of Scorpio. Always a good processing moon, although it's not necessarily easy. One thing about this morning is some of us may be taking some time with something, trying to really understand it, chew it, work it, research it better, and we get derailed. We get pulled in another direction. That's the Uranus impact on this particular early morning. So it's super important for early risers or people who are kind of involved with something in the early morning, just to know that you may get blindsided or something can come up to pull your attention away from what you've been doing. Make sure you've turned off the stove, like pay attention to what happens next if you find yourself moving quickly from one place to the other in the early morning on Monday. And the times I gave are Eastern time, so you'll need to adjust depending on where you live. And of course, Eastern time zone, many people did the daylight savings time thing on Sunday, but those adjustments, time zone adjustments, again, when Mercury's retrograde, become very, very important. Thank goodness for the world clocks on our phones and computers, but even they can be a little off depending on where you live, if a town or area doesn't change zones. So on Monday, the moon goes void, of course, at 7:28 a.m., and then it enters the sign of Sagittarius at 11:37 a.m. So when the moon is void, of course, it's advisable to finish things already in process, work on things already in motion, organize, clean your desk, get things in place for when the moon enters the next sign. Oh, yes. And also keeping in mind Mercury's retrograde, so that you can move with good momentum once the moon is in the next sign. Once it's in the sign of Sagittarius, now we're in a place where basically things want to move quickly. People get inspired, they act on things that get them excited or get their interest. They like to be passionate about what they're doing. Moon in Sag is very much about, I want to explore this, I want to check this out, this is interesting to me, I want to win this argument. Sometimes is a place where people might go with it. And the day has a lot of fuel that keeps building that fire up and really helping to expand how we want to drive it and what we want to do with it. The thing to keep in mind, especially in the evening as we head towards late evening, is some tempers can be very short. People can feel so passionate, they don't have the wiggle room of humor, or they may feel that it's tremendously important to drive their point home, even though they're not getting the leverage they want. So you want to avoid always arguments that are non-productive. I mean, in general, that's probably good advice for us all to take. But certainly if you find yourself in discussion with someone who's had a bit too much to drink, or they're just not really listening, remember the Mercury retrograde, to other sides of the argument, or they're so invested in the cause that they don't have the skills to be diplomatic and let other thoughts in. And this can be an argument you are having with the mirror, just within yourself, just feeling this kind of powder keg energy that's really building. And always the important thing is to recognize where the anger is coming from, where is the frustration coming from. And if nothing can be done about it at the time, define it and find a way to learn from it so that hopefully you'll be able to approach from a more strategic position in the near future. Good night's sleep is always advised if possible. Some people may be feeling very jazzed, though. A lot of energy in the late evening, especially Eastern time zone. When we get into the next day, the 10th, the thing to be aware of is that Jupiter goes direct, and it goes direct in the late evening, 11:30 p.m. Eastern time. So when a planet stations, what that means is it seems to be holding still from our perspective here on Earth, because what's happening is the orbit of Earth and the other planet are different, and we're getting into an alignment where that planet will appear to be moving backwards if it's retrograde, or in its true forward motion, which of course it always is, but when the Earth is spinning at a different velocity, sometimes it looks like planets are moving backwards. So what happens when we feel this kind of energy that's about to change, this energy that's still stasis, but we know that something is coming, and you may not know it, from an astrological perspective, but there is a sense of tension. And depending on the planet, what it symbolizes, that can be very magnified. In the case of Jupiter, largest planet in our solar system, just makes everything feel bigger. So whatever's going on for you may feel bigger emotionally, or hard to really define or put your finger on. Sometimes what happens is people get very energized, obstreperous, not knowing where to go or what to say, because they don't really understand in a deeper level what's going on with themselves emotionally. They don't want to look at it, they don't define it, or it's happened so quickly. Their intellect or their heart hasn't caught up with what they're experiencing in an emotional capacity. And so, depending on the person, it can feel very charged. I think the important thing on especially Tuesday, the 10th, is that you want to think about what you say before you say it. It's so super important. It always is. But when Mercury's retrograde, especially with the tension I'm seeing on this particular day, some people may shoot things out without fully thinking about how it's going to be heard, or they may start to say something that they haven't really grasped why they're saying it or the full consequences or intention of what it is they want to say. So ideally, if you feel very caught up in a situation or something you want to express, if you can take the time to write it down, jot it down, or at least articulate to someone else before you say it in the louder room what it is you're trying to convey, so that you get a sense of the impact of that delivery. And on the other side, if you feel like you've received something, some information, or a delivery that felt like too hard or too below the belt or too insubstantial, tease out, try to understand what is really being said there. Because when we react without fully understanding, then things don't work out too well. And the potential is there to understand better. One thing about once Jupiter goes direct and starts to really move along as the week progresses into the next week and beyond, is that when Jupiter is direct, the initiator often has a better outcome than when it's retrograde. And that depends on the situation, what the launch or the attempt is. Certainly in the case of real estate, always advisable seller to sell or declare the price or negotiate when Jupiter's direct. Sometimes it behooves us just to get it over with. And even though the buyer may profit with a Jupiter retrograde, when the seller knows, okay, but I got to get out, then it still can be the best outcome possible. And that, that totally depends on a situation. But in general, once Jupiter goes direct, I say to people, this is a good time to reach out, make that cold call, shake hands with that person you've been trying to meet, put your house on the market. Again, choose a good day and open your new business, all those things. Much, 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 much stronger once Jupiter is direct. So Wednesday, the moon goes void, of course, at 5:38 a.m. It's the last quarter moon of the waning cycle. And then it's void, of course, all day. So that means you're not really going to want to start something new, or some people may feel like, what do I do with all this energy? Because with moon in Sagittarius, fire moon, mutable modality, it's a very movement oriented moon. So people tend to, especially people with a lot of fire and air, people tend to want to be in a place of action, even armchair action, because they want to get things done. It's a great day to read for people who can just read. Great day. Great day to research, to bounce around ideas, to see what you're searching for. You may not land on anything concrete, but you can cover a lot of ground. So sometimes that's very beneficial if we're researching a project or trying to get a certain amount of information to build where we'll go when we actually crack in and start writing or developing a concept. It's also a wonderful day to be outdoors, to move your body in ways that your body is comfortable moving, to hear stories, tell stories. It's an explorative day, but the odds of actually cracking into that vein of gold, probably not going to happen today, but you can do the legwork, clear ground of things to get you closer to what you want to do going forward. Thursday, the 12th, the moon enters Capricorn at 12:07 a.m. And now we're in highly productive energy without all those kind of distractions or blips that might have happened earlier in the week. We are working to get things done. Mercury's retrograde, but with the moon in Capricorn, we can be very methodical, go over things that we need to go over, to work our ways to the people who can really be supportive and understand the situation, and kind of move away from anybody who isn't a serious contender. And there can be a part for some of us, especially in the afternoon, where some of us feel like, wow, I'm really on my own on this. But sometimes we need that clarity of focus in order to find our way to what it is we want to do and how we want to do it. And it's nice to have companions, coworkers, but if they aren't giving the same commitment and focus, then it can take away from what it is we want to do. So I see this as a highly productive day, a day where actually we can stumble on that vein of gold I mentioned earlier, especially when we get into Friday the 13th. That is a really shopping day for feeling the rewards of the work. And that becomes super productive, really, as of early morning on. Terrific day for breaking ground, doing things that need to be done. And when I say breaking ground, not necessarily starting things new, but sometimes people do. So it's a waning moon cycle. So Mercury's retrograde. Everything's coming together now. The important thing is to know, well, certainly with Mercury retrograde, certain professions or jobs benefit from that kind of deep searching, going underground way of working and looking. The thing to remember about all the retrogrades, uh, regardless of the planet, is that they're asking us to enter the experience from a deeper dimension, one that's more intuitive, perhaps unconscious, automatic. And we do want to live consciously. So when you feel a sense of, I feel I have to do this, it's valuable to go by intuition or what you sense, but you want to do it from a conscious perspective. It's not an integral part of the human experience to act intuitively or unconsciously without knowing that's what you're doing. So it's the knowing, the dissemination of, okay, I'm feeling I'm going to approach or have a conversation with that person across the room. What's the motivation? What is the feeling and sensation? Maybe the person is very attractive, and so that's part of the draw. Or maybe there's something you can't quite put your finger on. The way the person is holding themselves, they're alone, or they're in conversation with someone else that seems to be compelling. What is the reason you're moving in that direction? And as we move consciously through building relationships or approaching certain situations, we're doing it with our eyes open, with all our antenna dimensionally responding, so that we're sensitive to how we're moving and why. And that gives us so much more information than just the kind of impulsive move over there. Working on gaining consciousness, of course, in certain situations, we move because we feel it's a better thing to do from a very interior safety perspective. And that, of course, might require conscious reflection afterwards, not so much in the moment, because you want to take action in the moment. So on Saturday, the moon goes forward, of course, at 7:33 a.m., and then it enters Aquarius at 11:13 a.m. Now, once it's in the sign of Aquarius, we are in a space that is perhaps pulling us in different directions. Saturday can be a really great day for networking, connections, conversations, communication, when you keep in mind the Mercury retrograde, because you can set things up You can explore ideas, but if you nail things down contractually or try to tie it up in a way of meetings going forward, etc., things may not go as planned. It doesn't mean it's a total fail. It just means you want to keep that in mind because everything might be moving so fast, popping like popcorn, the ideas, the connections, but we have to anchor them because when we don't, it tends to not pan out as we would like. And that passes into Sunday the 15th as well. Overall, Moon in Aquarius can be tremendous days for just enjoying like-minded people or people who maybe are not really like-minded, but you find a sense of how to build community and conversation and work in ways that are expansive. The key is keep in mind the Mercury retrograde and all will be well.
You have been listening to Astrology Insight Now. Please share with your friends, and if you'd like to make a donation, you can do so at astrologyinsightnow.com. Have a stellar week, and we hope to see you next time.